And the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is calling on the BC government to halt its proposed ban on gas and diesel-powered vehicles. The News Forum's Western Canada Bureau Chief Hal Roberts spoke to Chris Sims, a spokesperson for the CTF, to find out what their biggest concerns are.
Chris, there appears to be a real strong shift to green energy and electric vehicles. Why the pushback from your group?
Well, because Canadians just can't afford this. 50% of Canadians or thereabouts are usually within $200 every month of not being able to make the minimum payments on their most basic bills. So they're struggling to afford things like rent and food and all of that sort of stuff. So the idea that the government should force them into only being allowed to purchase a big, expensive battery-powered car is just wrong. Further, we don't have the electricity to power a fleet of electric vehicles in Canada. And government-wise, we don't have the money to build the infrastructure required to power this fleet of vehicles. So it's really a non-starter.
Now, what are your thoughts on the Carney government's retreat from its own EV mandate? I mean, Ottawa says it's pausing the electric vehicle mandate by launching a 60-day review of the Trudeau-era policy, which would have forced dealerships to make 20% of new vehicle sales electric by 2026, rising to a complete ban by the year 2035. Now, the PM says the trade war with the United States has increased a lot of pressure on the auto industry.
It really has. So there's so much in what Carney did, and it has so many implications. Number one, this is a huge win for anybody who cares about taxpayers' money or cares about the ability to choose what kind of car you want to buy and drive. Carney climbing down a little bit on something like a ban on the sale of gas and diesel-powered vehicles is huge. I mean, before he was prime minister, he literally wrote a book while UN special envoy on these topics. So we know he's a huge fan of carbon taxes, and he's a huge fan of battery-powered vehicles, or EVs. But he's making what looks to be pretty practical decisions so far as prime minister. So we're happy to see that. Now, we know it's just delayed by a year, but in the game of politics, this looks like he's climbing down out of the tree. Other evidence I can point to here from experience, the Globe and Mail editorial board, not just a visiting columnist, the editorial board is saying, pull the plug on this thing. And as you know from your experience, Hal, the Globe and Mail is one of the deans, one of the smart kids in class at the press gallery. So they carry a lot of weight.
Now, Chris, despite the federal government's pullback and delay, BC is plowing ahead anyway with its own rules. Can you explain what they are?
Yeah, I was surprised actually to learn just how stringent they are. So very similar to the carbon tax, people might remember, Ottawa back then said something along the lines of this: you can implement your own carbon tax, and if it's not strong enough, we'll implement our own. So what BC did back then was saying, we're going to be carbon tax leaders and make it the most expensive in all of Canada. That's kind of what they're doing right now with the so-called EV mandate. So starting in just like 4 months' time, 2026, 26% of all new vehicle sales must be plug-in electric. So battery-powered cars. To put that another way, 1 out of every 4 vehicles rolling off the lot is going to have to be electric. Now, nationwide, we have the latest numbers, sales numbers. I don't have them broken down for BC, but nationally, Hal, the natural demand for sales of new battery-powered vehicles, it's about 8%. They want a huge jump up to 26%. And the other big thing that they want to change there, Hal, and this what shocked me, by 2030, so in less than 5 years' time, 90% quota. Meaning only 10% of all new cars are going to be permitted by the government to be gasoline or diesel powered. It's pretty strenuous.
Now, when I was in Southern Ontario recently, Chris, I was kind of overwhelmed by the amount of Teslas I saw driving on the highways, particularly in Niagara and the Lake region and St. Catharines. What do you say to those who strongly believe in EVs and the benefits they offer economically and for the environment?
That's a great question. Number one, we think it should be up to individuals to choose what they want to drive. For some folks, if they're a commuter, if they live in an urban area, if they like things like, Elon Musk's Teslas, battery-powered vehicles, that's totally fine and completely up to them. If that's something they can afford, if they can have a charging station in their house, if perhaps their employer has an electric vehicle charging station, that's totally up to them. What we're concerned about at the Taxpayers Federation fundamentally is the cost. So if you just break it down, say that a wizard magically changed all of our own vehicles, the ones we personally own, so not truckers or delivery vehicles, personally owned vehicles in Canada, if we switched that overnight, we would need 14 new, huge, can-do nuclear reactors. Like the big ones, not the little modular ones we're talking about in the prairies. We mean the ones at like Darlington, okay? 14 of them. Those things cost around $15 billion each. And they take like a decade to build each. That's just personal vehicles. And you don't even need to take my word for it on the cost. Natural Resources Canada has a study up on its website, the Government of Canada's website, that transitioning Canada over to electricity for vehicles, $300 billion.
But let me ask you something. Is that not the cost worth it, considering how much pollution there is and maybe the pollution contributing to climate change? Is that investment not worth it?
That's another great question. So it's similar to the situation we had with the carbon tax. So any way you slice it, Canada is responsible for less than 2% of global emissions that people consider harmful to climate change. Less than 2%. Even if, as the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had said in French, I'm translating, even if we stopped doing everything, we stopped cooking, we stopped heating our homes, we stopped driving any sort of vehicles, it wouldn't make a dent in global emissions. If folks are truly concerned about global emissions being the environmental problem, then we should do smart things like sell our clean burning natural gas to places like India. Just personally speaking, I would consider myself an environmentalist. I shop thrift, like this is from a thrift shop, so's the shirt. I hand sewed my baby's cloth diapers. I've literally hugged trees. Like I grew up on Vancouver Island. Like I really believe in this stuff. But trying to dictate what kind of vehicle people drive in Canada and or hitting us with carbon taxes, that isn't the environmental solution.
Chris Sims with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Hal.